There are two things you really should consider before you build a website, even before you start designing it on paper. Think about your domain and your hosting. I'm not going to talk to you about where you can purchase these from because there are many options if you go and do a Google search. But my recommendation is that for your domain, the identity of your website, almost in a way what you're going to be forming your brand around, it's best if you buy that yourself to protect yourself. Because if you let someone else buy that, they could either hold you to ransom, delete the domain, or do anything they want if you fall out of favor with them. Now, if you are sold the domain through a reselling package, maybe someone is offering you hosting as well, that's for you to consider, and I have nothing against good businesses that offer this as a service. But my recommendation, if you're a little bit unsure, is to get your domain and your hosting yourself, especially your domain, okay? And when it comes to hosting, start thinking about, does it give you SSL certificate? Does it allow you to make backups? Does it have a staging facility? Does it come with an inbuilt email facility as well? Now, many people will say, well, you can get your email as part of your domain or another add-on service. But if you're starting off and you want to keep things simple, having it as part of your hosting is a good step. I quite like SiteGround. 20i are really good as well, but there's loads of different options out there. The key thing about both of them is make sure you have some form of control. Because remember, your website will sit on the hosting, which will be connected to the domain. And if you don't have sight of them or the billing or how you can get access or control over it, you will regret it. Now, if you have no intention of ever working on the website and you're going to let someone else administrate and completely manage it, again, make sure you have a contract drawn up whereby if you do need to get access, because you do need to get hold of that website, you can do so. Once you've sorted out your hosting and connected your domain, go and get WordPress installed. Either you're doing it or it's part of the hosting package where it's already done for you, or you get a developer to do it. When you then get into the WordPress website, whether it's you or the developer, this is probably what you're going to see. Very quickly, we're going to go over some of the WordPress settings that I think you should definitely consider before you do anything else on the website. I hate all of the screen options that you get on WordPress, so I very much like to just untick everything on here like that. I like to have a clear dashboard that is litter free. If you've installed this via SiteGround, you will probably have SiteGround Optimizer and SiteGround Security. I'm going to deactivate both of them and then I'm going to delete them. Now, if you're not using SiteGround, you probably wouldn't have had that. But if you are using another hosting provider, it's not a bad idea to sometimes get rid of the plugins they install for you because you don't need them. And we are going to go over the plugins I recommend. I'm going to go over to posts, click all posts, and I'm going to get rid of the Hello World dummy post. I'm going to go to pages. And again, I'm going to get rid of the pages here, trash that one and trash that. Again, depending on how this has been installed, there might be more pages on there. It's always good to start with a blank canvas. Then I'm going to go to media and go to the library. And if there is any media image in here, again, I'm going to clear that out. The next thing I'm going to do is go down to appearance and where we have themes. Now, this will probably come with the themes that you have here at the moment. Because we're building with Elementor and we will add that plugin shortly, I would install the Hello theme because it is super light and it's built by the Elementor team. So I'm going to click Add New. Go over here, and I mean, if it didn't show up, which it has already with Hello Elementor, just go and type in Hello and you'll see it. Please bear in mind, though, that there will be other themes that pop up with the word Hello. You don't want those, okay? You just want the standard Hello theme. Click Install, and once it's installed, then activate it. Now, delete all the other themes. Now, if anyone is saying, well, isn't that a risk? Well, not really. And you must also consider that if you have lots of themes sat in your WordPress that you're not using and you have no intention of ever using or converting to, they're taking up space in your WordPress database or inodes as well. And if you care about how much space you have on your server for your host, definitely keep it light, lean, and mean. Now, there is an option to customize the theme, but we're not going to do that just yet until after we've added in some images. So we will come back to revisit this later on. Let's now just go back over to plugins where I've already removed some of them. Let's now go down to settings and go to the first one, which is general. Now, even though this website is secure, it's got an SSL certificate as part of the hosting, and it has got HTTPS in the address. It's missing the S over here. So my tip to you is to go and stick that in there and then go and hit the save changes. But while you're here at this point in time, you might as well decide on what is the site title or the tagline for your website. I've changed it to be Our Hike, and the tagline is Adventure with Your Backpack. If you want to change the time zone, go ahead. Then go over to the reading setting. Now this is where you will set the page for your home page and maybe your blog page. However, we're going to do things a little different. We can't set a page for the home page yet because we haven't built it, so we will return to this later on. If we go to the discussion tab, this is where you can have a think about if you're going to have a blog, are you going to allow people to leave comments or not? The options here are very self-explanatory, so go through them once you've started building out your blog post. However, there is one thing I do want to point out. If you do have a blog or posts and you notice you're getting a lot of spam comments and they're coming from a particular IP address, you can pop the IP address in here. Now, you can't completely stop all spam, and we will talk to you about methods as we get to that stage, but sticking in IPs is not a bad option. Let's now go to media, and this is one of my favorite settings. A lot of people leave this as it is. You don't actually need to have all of these sizes, even when you have a WooCommerce store. I'm going to set all of these to be 0. I'm also going to untick that box 0, 0, 0, 0. And again, I'm going to untick the box here about organizing in a month and year based folder. Honestly, I'm not overly fussed by that. Let's then hit save changes. Now let's go to permalinks. Now, 9 times out of 10, your permalink will be set to post name. This is the one I strongly recommend you go for. If you want to go for a custom structure, you can, but don't go for the 4 that are over here. I don't even know why WordPress still allow these to exist, but make sure you go for post name. And they were the WordPress settings. Now let's go into the plugins you want to use. Now, I've already mentioned that I like to keep things quite lean and mean, and we are building this with an Elementor website. So let's go and install the Elementor plugin. Let's hit add new, type in Elementor and install it. Now you will notice lots of third-party add-ons. If you are building your website with Elementor free, you may end up relying upon a lot of these. The danger though is that if you have too many add-ons, you can experience some incompatibility or conflict as all of these plugins start to update over time. I strongly recommend you go for Elementor Pro, which you will do and go and purchase, and there is a link below in the description, but I'm not here to force you to do anything, which is a much more safer option than using third party. Now, the other plugins that I'm going to add are mainly for performance or just doing a little bit extra with your website. So I'm going to go install the Fast Press plugin, WP Meteor plugin, and the Code Snippets plugin. These are all free plugins. Now, later on, we will install WooCommerce and Rank Math for SEO, but we'll do that later on. Something I do mention quite a lot is if you're building a WooCommerce website, get all your plugins in now so that you know what works and doesn't work. Now, I'm going to take a bit of a risk and do the WooCommerce later on because I know they work, so it's not really much of a risk. But my advice to you is that if you are building a WooCommerce website and you can have maybe 3 or 4 extra plugins on there, it's a really good idea to start getting them all in, activate them, and then as you build your website, you'll notice if there's any problems or issues. What you don't want to do is build a 20-page website, add in a plugin, and then everything kind of stops working or glitches, and you're now scratching your head, or you feel like you've got to undo 20 pages worth of effort. You really don't want to be in that scenario. And let me just go through the settings really quickly. But WP Meteor is a very basic setting. I'm going to set this to be all the way, so delay until first interaction. If you find you have any issues with carousels or sliders, then drop this down until it works. But let me just put it on all the way. Then I'm going to do the Fast Press settings. This is a really simple plugin to use. I'm going to make sure that this one stays off, and I'm also going to deactivate the bottom one as well. I'm going to deactivate all of the images because I'm going to use different methods to optimize them. And when I get down here to the HTML, CSS, and JS, I'm going to leave everything on except load scripts asynchronously. Try saying that really fast. That's how simple it is. Now we're going to go over to code snippets. And what I recommend you do is delete a lot of the items that you have here. And then we're going to hit add new and add in a load of snippets for performance. There is a link in the video description which will take you to a page where you can get all of these codes. By the way, some of the codes are not always just Elementor specific. You can use them on any WordPress website and you'll notice they'll be a slightly different color. You can still install it even if you're not using Elementor. First one is remove Google fonts. And I'm going to paste in this code here. And then I'm going to hit save changes and activate. What this does is stop Google fonts from being fetched. If you are using Google fonts, and you got to watch out for this, because even when you're using Elementor, the fonts will be there and you'll think, oh, well, that's okay. I'm not actually fetching. You are still fetching from Google and you don't want that because it can add on a bit of a delay. Okay, we've done that. Now let's add in our second one. We are going to custom load fonts in rather than fetching. Now this bit of snippet ensures that they are definitely being loaded. Now technically, this shouldn't be needed, but I find that when you're using Elementor or even many WordPress websites, you just need to force it through a little bit. Again, save changes and activate. WordPress automatically lazy loads images. Now, Elementor do give you the power and authority to stop that. However, I think adding in this snippet is just an extra bit of oomph to make it work. Now, if you're familiar with page speed performance or page speed insights, removing unused JavaScript is a big headache. All you got to do is dump in this bit of code, save changes and activate, and this is going to help you out a lot. Another common problem is where you're told that the widths and heights don't have an explicit sizing set for them. You'll be familiar with this. Again, drop in this bit of code. Now you may need to remove this code if you are using a image carousel because sometimes it doesn't work very well, but install it, activate, and then you get to test later on. And the final one is purging your website, basically clearing the cache out. Go and insert the code and save changes and activate. And you'll notice at the top now an option appears called Purge Cache. If I click that, it says, are you sure you want to purge? You hit yes, and that is now done. 9 times out of 10, we will install another plugin to do this. Well, you don't have to do that. The snippet here does it for you. Now, if we go back to snippets, you can see everything that we've added. If at any point in time you did need to deactivate, just hit the toggle and it is now off. Let's just pop that back in. Now let's go and add in Elementor Pro. You will have to go and sign up and purchase it, get a subscription for it, and there's many options that you can go for, and there is a link in the video description. Once you've got it, click Upload Plugin and install it from wherever you've saved it. Once you've got Elementor Pro in there, let's just visit the Elementor settings now. Go over to Elementor on the left-hand side. Go and click Settings. My tip is to leave both of these boxes unchecked, right? So you don't want to inherit the colors from your theme or the font because we're going to have full-on control over what we had. I'm not overly fussed about being a data sharer either. When it comes to integrations, if you want to add in any API keys, you can do, but 9 times out of 10, you won't really worry about this. In the Advanced tab, for the Google fonts, I'm going to set this to be disabled. And in the final tab, which is Features, I'm going to set my inline font icons to be active, my Flexbox container to be active, my nested elements to be active, and lazy load background images I'm going to make be inactive because this is meant to not lazy load your very first image. However, I'm going to test it out without the inactive, and I might come back and revisit this later on, so just go with what I'm doing. I'm going to make the optimized DOM output be active, improved CSS loading active, and everything else I'm going to leave as default. Now, there is an option down here for form submissions. If people are just contacting you with like a message, you could set this to be active. If, however, you're getting people to submit PDFs or images to you, every time they submit, it's going to take up space in your database, okay? And you can easily start to see your storage getting maxed out. So think very carefully about, are you going to enable form submissions? Now comes the bit where we have to do a little bit more administration, mainly on the global colors, the global fonts, and obviously the custom loading of the fonts. Now, some of what I'm going to show you, There are many ways to do this, but I'm going to show you my methods, and it's not all now just in WordPress. We're going to be using other solutions like Canva, BulkResizePhotos.com, Font Squirrel. There's lots of tools out there, by the way, okay? But if you follow these steps, you're making your life so much easier as you come to build, especially for page speed performance. I've created a logo on Canva, and I've downloaded it as a PNG, but I haven't just done it as this landscape design that you see here. I've also done it as a square, a 500 by 500 pixel image, so that I can use it later on as a favicon or a social media sharing icon as well. I've also collected loads of images again on Canva around hiking. Again, I've downloaded these as PNG, and I've picked one of my stock images that I've downloaded, and I've got Canva to basically give me the color scheme. Here's what I really like. If I was to click on the background here and go and click the color palette, it picks up the colors from this image and starts to identify them for me. So now at any point I can go in and go, okay, I now need the hex code for that color. Now I want to just focus on one little aspect of this about web accessibility, and throughout the video we will be addressing this. What's very common is that you or your client will come up with a color scheme, but you haven't really considered how accessible they are, especially with color contrast. I'm going to pick up the hex code for that kind of bluey, purpley, navyish color we've got there, and I'm going to go to this website, and the link will be in the video description. I'm going to pop in the background color to be that hex code and hit return, and I'm going to say that my font color will be black, like this. That's ridiculous, number one, because when you now look at it down here, we are failing web accessibility scenarios, and you really don't want that. If I go and change my font to be white, we will now pass everything. But what if you stick in a color here and you're not exactly passing? So let's pick this color here, get the hex code. Now we are passing to a point, but we're still failing. What you could do is now start to use this and drag it until you get a pass mark, which is here. Now you have to go and speak to your client or have a think about, well, what is our color scheme going to be? You could still use the original color, but maybe for your buttons, if you are going to have white text as the font for the button, you might want to go with this color instead. If you care about web accessibility, please do consider this. This is all great that I went and got my stock from Canva. We've got my 3 logos. So I've got a logo which is 500 by 500. One that is 200 by 80 and another one that's 100 by 40. It's not a bad idea when you have images like this, especially logos, where you put the size in the description as well, so you recognize what they are. But if we now look at my images, I've got 2. I've got one which is a collection of bags, because we're going to use it for WooCommerce later, 2.3 megabytes. And then we got this one here, 62 megabytes for images that are PNG, where some of them are 2.5, nearly 3 megabytes in size, is ridiculous. What you really want to make sure you do is stick them into a tool called BulkResizePhotos.com. Now, there are plugins out there that you could use on your WordPress website, but what you really got to consider is, do you really want to add in another plugin, some extra bloat to do things online? Because they don't always optimize really, really well. This is an amazing plugin. Watch this. I'm going to hit choose images. I'm going to go to my folder that contains all those images. I'm going to highlight all of them all in one go. Hit open so I don't have to do 20 at any one time. I'm going to maintain the size. I'm going to say give me 85% quality. 85% is really, really good, okay? Don't think it's going to drop it. Set it to be a WebP format. This is what you must do. Okay, I know some people say that, well, don't certain phones or laptops or machines, they can't handle it. Yeah, if it's a really old machine, but internet browsers now are fine. And any that have an issue, right, I'm really sorry, but you've got to move with the times, everyone. Let's then hit start. And what this is now going to do is take all of those images, which was about 62 something megabytes, and it's doing it real time as I'm talking, and it's compressing them. It's already sent it to my downloads folder without me having to hit the word download. And we've gone from 62 megabytes to 5 megabytes. We are now less than 10% of what the original size was. You can see here now the zipped files for all the stock images, for the bags, and also for the logos as well. I'm going to unzip all of them and now add them to my media library and drop in the logos, bags, and the images. Now, because they're in WebP format and they're already compressed, they will load really, really quickly. Now, one thing I do want to point out, if I go back to my stock images, is can you notice they all have a title? So they're not exactly the same because you want to make sure they're a little bit different. Having titles isn't a bad idea, rather than just saying image 1, or what's really worse is when someone gives you an image from a camera and it's got tons of random characters in there. These are not going to be the titles that we'll be using in the alt title, which we will address later on for SEO. But it's a good idea to have decent titles in there. And this gives you an idea of the range I had. But what's really awesome is how that is a total of 5.5 megabytes in totality. Some of you have an image which is 5 megabytes just on its own. So have a think about BulkResizePhotos.com. Now, if we go over to Elementor, there is the option down here for custom fonts. And here's where we're going to add the fonts that we're going to use on the website. Now, I've already decided that I'm going to use the Railway font, and you could go to Google Fonts and download that. It's really simple. You just hit Download Family. However, when you try and convert a lot of Google fonts that you've downloaded from here into a WOF2 format, which is the compressed format that you should be using, sometimes it won't do it for you and it fails. So here's where you should go instead. Font Squirrel, and the link is in the video description. It's a free website. Find your font and then download the TTF. Now, I've just said to you, we need to use the WOF2 format. Why am I going for the TTF? Pretty simple. Once you've downloaded it, go to Web Font Generator, and the link is right there on the same page. And what you now want to do is upload the fonts that you want to convert. So if I go to upload fonts and I go to Railway here, here's the ones I wanted to upload: Railway Light, Regular, Medium, Bold, etc. Look at the size of each of them. 180, 175 kilobytes per font. What you'll do is you'll upload them and you will then leave it as optional, and then it will download them, and it basically converts them into WOF and WOF2. Now, I only care about the WOF2 format, so I'm now going to show you what this looks like after I'd converted it. They are now 25 kilobytes. We've gone from 180 to 25, okay? And that's the reason why WOF2 is your friend. Back over into WordPress, we go to Custom Fonts, and we are going to hit Add New. I'm going to call this Railway, and then I'm going to add in a font variation. These are basically all the different sizes. So I'm going to go and pick one for normal, and we're going to pick a WOF2 file, click Upload, select Files. In fact, I might as well take all of these over in one go first. Ding, 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 ding. And then I'm going to pick Regular and select that. That is now added. Now I'm going to add in another font variation. This time I'm going to go for one which is 300, and this will be my lighter one. Once you've done all of that, hit Publish. And just click Update as well, just to be sure. And what you can now see is all the different sizes. We have the regular, and then we have 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. I get a bit of a range there. I haven't added in any italic ones because I wasn't bothered by that. My recommendation is that you don't completely replicate what I did. If you only ever intend to use normal, 300, and maybe 600, don't load in the 7, 8, 5, or 4. Now, once I've built out the website, if I realize, well, I did not use 800, I'll come back into here and I will completely delete it. Believe me, you're probably thinking, well, if I'm not using it and it's sat there, what's the harm? You want to keep your website, the front end and the back end and the databases as lean and mean and unbloated as possible. Now let's go and customize our global colors and our global fonts. I'm going to go over to Pages and I'm going to add New, and I'm going to create Homepage. So we're going to go and type Home, and then I'm going to hit Edit with Elementor. If you start designing your page here, you're in the WordPress block editor, and this isn't really what you want to be doing unless you're building a blog post, and we'll come back onto that later on. For now, we're just going to hit Edit with Elementor, and this is our Elementor page. I'm going to fly through the interface so you understand everything. We have a few settings here. We have the Settings tab, whereby we can say hide the title, which makes total sense as to why would you want to have the title visible there. We have navigator, so as we add items onto the page, we can start to see the layout and we can rejig it. And you'll see me doing that as we build the website. We have a history tab. So if you've gone and done about 50 things and you want to roll back, you can do. We also have the option to view via desktop, tablet or mobile, and we will be looking at that as we're building the website. We also have preview changes. So what does the page look by removing all of our interface? And of course, we have the publish option. Now, as we build out the page, I will be going over some of the settings again and what you need to click or think about as you're building. But for now, we're just going to hit the hamburger in the top left, and we are going to click Site Settings. And then we are going to go to Global Colors and Global Fonts. Now, I've done many videos on this before, so if you want some more detailed explanation over what you should and should not do, please go and watch them, and I'll put a video link in the description. But you don't want to spend a lot of time on the typography, and this is the mistake a lot of people make. You define your font family and your colors here. In the typography, if I'm really honest, you keep that empty. Let's go to global colors. The first thing we're going to do is start setting our colors. And if you remember, I've already defined some of them using Canva. So I'm going to grab the hex codes, go over here, and I'm going to change them to be what I want. It's always good to have a color palette before you start, so you're not second guessing, especially if you can agree that with your client beforehand. And this is where showing them an example image of how the colors work on the page can be super helpful. Once you've done that, go and hit update and then go back. Now, I've just said don't touch anything in typography. I kind of lied a little bit. What you do want to be aware of, though, is your link. Now, we will come back onto that later on, but if you need to define your links or how your hyperlinks appear, this is where you go and set the color. Now, let's go back and go to global font. This is really simple. You don't start setting your weighting for your font in terms of 300, 400, 500. You can do, but I recommend you don't do that. All you want to do over here is set the family. And you can see here that Railway is identified as a custom font rather than one of the other Google fonts that you would have had below. Remember, I have unchecked it. I've said disable. We don't want Google fonts to be loaded. So it's giving us system ones. But I am going to use the Railway one here. I'm going to use it over here for the secondary font. I'm also going to use it for the text font, and also for the accent as well. I know, that's quite a lot, isn't it? We haven't even started building out the website, but I'm just getting you to understand some of the core things you should do before you build any website. Now, you could use other bits of kit where you create like a blueprint, so next time you build a website, you just install from a new all of these settings already built out for you. And I have done that in the past, but sometimes I like to do it just stage by stage so I know exactly what I'm doing and I can root out any issues as I'm going along. Let's now test out the website, especially with all of those performance snippets that we added. Back on the page, I'm going to hit the settings in the bottom left and I'm going to say set this to be an Elementor canvas. What that does is remove a lot of the wording that you saw at the top and bottom because we haven't defined or built our header or our footer. So I want to test this out now with a complete blank page. I'm just going to drop into here a heading. That heading is the Railway font because we've set it as a global font. I'm just going to go into my style. I'm going to pick one of my colors here. Let's just go for the text one. And for simplicity, I'm going to give this a size of about 20. And I'm going to set the weight to be normal like that. I'm then going to go and click the mobile responsive button. And if that's not there, don't forget you have the option down here to see the responsive mode. Go and click it. And I'm going to check that the font looks okay there as well. And now I'm going to hit publish. Before we do that, let's ensure that the website knows that's the page that you're going to land on because we haven't defined it. Do you remember I mentioned this before? If you go back into WordPress in your dashboard, and you go down to settings and reading, we haven't defined a home page. In fact, this is what the home page looks like right now. That isn't what we set. So over here, we're going to set this to be a static page and the home page will be home. And that is there because we've now built it. Now hit save changes. I will recommend every time you change pages or you now want to assess it on the live, go to Elementor on your left-hand side, go down to tools and hit regenerate files and data. And if you have got a caching snippet or another plugin, go and purge as well. And now when we view the page, we've got the header. But what does this mean for page speed insights? Let's go and test it out. So here's the score for the desktop. Ignore the 91 SEO because we haven't done any SEO yet. And here's what it is for the mobile. I'm going to show you what the score is now if I deactivate all the snippets and the fast press and the WP Meteor plugin as well. Still have the header, but the desktop is now 91 and the mobile has gone down to 81. That's 19% drop. So follow the steps I've instructed. Once you've reactivated and you can see the timestamp so I'm not lying, everything goes back to 100%. Depending on the complexity of your website, you might not hit 100 and the score might drop to 90, 80, 70. And sometimes you have to accept that depending on what your website is doing. What did your client want? What were you trying to achieve for your target audience or your market? But before you build anything, you need to be hitting 100 or 99%. So as you build the website, the moment your score drops or goes down or there's a bit of an issue anywhere, you're going to spot the score drop and then you have to have a think about, do you still want that feature? Do you want to compromise? Do you want to try a different solution? Page speed is not everything, but it is a big thing and you really should consider it. If you're still watching at this point, I'd love to know your comments and what you now feel about your images in terms of WebPing them, custom loading your fonts, thinking about your color scheme and getting your page speed performance right before you do anything else. And if you want more tips and tricks about how to help yourself out, please go and have a look at our super course or our mastery modules on our website.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat.